Hello, so as promised, here I am again, second day, second experiment. Like I say, I don't know where I'm going with this really. It's just I'm trying out. I've got this idea of making a course. I'm over 50, so I wanted to make it especially for over 50-year-olds and encourage you as well to make the change that I've made, because it's changed my life, and I just think that we really need to do something, people. Anyway. So I want to talk today about going vegan for the environment, and I mean, it hardly needs saying that the number of problems that we've got now. Just yesterday on the news, I heard about Insectageddon, which if you're over 50, then you'll remember for sure. You used to get all the insects on front of the number plate of your car when you'd be driving in the spring or the summer. And now when we drive around, virtually no insects. So something drastic is going on. Actually, if you really want to hear something very, very interesting about the whole subject of glyphosate, this is slightly advanced, but one of the most interesting interviews I've heard ever was Rich Roll, who runs a podcast. And he interviewed Zach Bush. That interview is really worth listening to. Anyway, so how does going vegan impact on the environment? Well, I spent I think probably like most people, before I discovered this whole paradigm shift, was that I should do things to try not to make such an impact. Or so on an environmental level, I was aware that there was deforestation going on in the Amazon. I was kind of aware that we were overfishing. I knew that we were overfishing. I understood that we were producing CO2 gases that were being released into the atmosphere that were causing global warming. And of course, I could also connect the two, the number of extreme weather events and human activity. So I knew all this was going on. I'm talking now about a point before I became vegan. So I remember once I went out and bought a shower head, one of those shower heads that saves water. It doesn't, not as much water comes out. I used to think a little bit about my choice of car, so I actually drive a diesel now, which, as it turns out, is not environmentally friendly. But at the time, I thought, well, if I buy a diesel, more miles to the gallon, so that's it's a small contribution. And I used to also go around turning lights off, especially when my children would leave them on all the time. So small things, and I obviously didn't think that these were having an enormous impact, but I had no idea that the most important change that I could have made to be environmentally friendly was actually to stop eating meat and dairy, because the damage that animal agriculture does to the environment is mind-boggling. I mean, it's hidden. We're not told about this. I highly recommend a film called Cowspiracy. You might be able to find it on YouTube. If not, I highly recommend you go and look for it, because this film pulls back the veil on everything that's going on in the world of how animal agriculture impacts the environment. And then I find out, aged 50, or just before actually, that the biggest thing I could have done was actually stop eating meat and dairy. And I've got a few facts here that I'm going to go through. I prepared them obviously to aid me with this. So, did you know that animal agriculture, or eating meat and dairy, is responsible for more greenhouse gas emissions than the entire global transport system put together. I mean, that is just amazing, and I never knew that. I never knew that when I was eating meat, the contribution I was making to greenhouse gases was far, far more than going for a drive into the countryside. Who would have known? One burger can drive 200 kilometers or something. It's really, really shocking. So, to produce a single pound of beef, okay, this is also amazing. We need 2,500 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of beef. So think of all the water shortages, think of all the good things we could do with the water, and instead we're feeding it to animals so we can slaughter them in a horrible, inhumane way. So animal agriculture is the leading cause of ocean dead zone. So when we grow crops to feed to animals and we put all the herbicides on there, all the pesticides and all of that stuff, it all flows down the rivers and into the oceans. But on top of that, all the animals' excrement, cow shit, all the rest of it also flows into the oceans, and all this causes huge, what's called ocean dead zone. So areas of the ocean that are completely dead, again, just because we're eating meat and dairy. In the UK and in lots of other countries too, intensive farming is a real major factor in species extinction. So the reason that we're losing a lot of animals and birds, of course, is also because of animal agriculture. Think of all the subsidies, you know. If people would actually pay the price that it costs to produce the meat, there wouldn't be so much meat and dairy being consumed, but it's all subsidized. So that's another thing. Okay, so I've got this written down here. Globally, cows produce 150 billion gallons of methane every day. Methane, by the way, is 25 to 100 times more destructive than CO2. So another thing, agriculture is responsible for 80 to 90% of US water consumption. 80 to 90% just to feed the animals, which we then in turn can eat. So okay, according to a reputable resource, we're at the moment we're living through the largest mass extinction in 65 million years. Animals, insects, birds, fish, sea creatures, all of these things are happening. Why? Lots of reasons, but one of the major reasons is our addiction to meat and dairy. So that's another really good reason for not eating meat and dairy. Okay, listen to this. This is so, talk about shit. 130 times more animal waste than human waste is produced in the USA. 130 times. So is there any real wonder that there's ocean dead zones? Ocean dead zones, you know, it sound, you can just say it, can't you? You know, ocean dead zone. Oh, it's an ocean dead zone. But this means that there's an area in the ocean where nothing lives, and we're doing it just because, yeah, we like the taste of a beef burger. 90 to 100 million tons of fish are pulled from our oceans every year. Animal agriculture is responsible for 91% of the destruction of the Amazon rainforest. 91%. 80% of antibiotics in the USA are sold for livestock. So that's another major issue. All of the diseases, think of the coronavirus, all of these animal infections that are jumping species to us. And if we're feeding all the antibiotics to animals, then yeah, it's just crazy. So by making the switch to a non-meat and dairy diet, you're also making a contribution to less use of antibiotics, and probably also ridding your own body of antibiotics, because when you eat meat, of course, the meat is contaminated with the antibiotics that are being fed to the animals. So, and the last message I've got written down here is that somebody who eats a vegan diet produces the equivalent of 50% less carbon dioxide, uses an 11th of the oil, 1/13 of the water, and 1/18 of the land compared to a meat lover eating meat. So I actually went vegan for health reasons. That's the truth. My intention was to become more healthy, and that the health side of it will be the next video. But when I understood the impact that my eating meat and dairy was having on the environment, I was a little bit ashamed, really, because I'm nearly 50 years old, and that my daughter, who was at the time 18 years old, could come to me and explain all this, and I had absolutely no idea, was really shocking. So hopefully, anyway, that this rambling video that I've just created will help you think about it a little bit, what we're doing. When you look around us and we see the fires in Australia and these extreme weather events that are gathering pace here in Tenerife, where I live now. I'm speaking now. It's February, and it's been the warmest winter I've experienced here in Tenerife, and it does make you wonder. We're changing the environment, and when we realise that one of the major drivers is the diet that we're eating. Of course, politicians don't want to talk about it. I mean, politicians know that if they come out and say, look, we all have to stop eating as much meat and dairy, they won't get the votes. People don't want to change, and they don't want to hear the truth. So that's one of the reasons that we need to take the power into our own hands and make the decisions with our wallet. So anyway, hopefully this has been an aid. Tomorrow it's health.